Okay, so today we're going to talk about general facial proportions before you're working on your portrait painting. So last semester, we practiced kind of how to draw eyes and noses and lips and individual facial features. So this is just some general proportion tips. So what I want you to do is draw along in your sketchbook. And if you want me to pause or slow down, just let me know. And to start out, and again, these are general kind of tips for facial proportions. Everybody is different. So start out in pencil. I would suggest starting out in a lighter pencil so you can erase. I'm going to go with a slightly darker pencil just so you can see it a little better on the video. But in your sketchbook, start out by drawing an oval, and whoever you're drawing as an individual, again, you're doing this in general and kind of taking notes. So the lines that we put on here for guidelines, please leave them on there and jot down some notes as to why they're there, because this is not so much a finished product as this is a reference for you to use when you're trying to draw a person like your self-portrait, for example, in the future. Okay, so like if you're trying to draw a whole figure, the unit of measure to figure out your proportions is just size relationships. If you're drawing a whole person, you measure by heads. If you're drawing just a face, you usually measure by eyes. So, you can, when you're drawing yourself, you can kind of take the width of your own eye and see how many times it fits into it and use that as kind of a touchstone. But in this case, you have an oval. When you're looking at a specific person, you can look at, okay, do they have a more round face, like a more sort of moon-shaped face? Do they have a more like heart-shaped face? Do they have a more square jaw? But for now, start with an oval shape. And then you're going to put a line down the middle. If you want, you can use your ruler and measure the actual center, or you can just kind of eyeball it, and which is what I'm doing right now. I'm kind of looking about where the middle looks to me, and I'm putting in a light line right down the middle. So that line down the middle is because if you're looking at a face, faces are usually symmetrical. Oops, I'm upside down there. Faces are generally symmetrical, more or less. We usually have like one eye that's a little bigger, or, something like that. One side of your lip might be shaped a little different, but more or less symmetrical. So that's your line of symmetry. It's going to go down the center, about halfway. And then the next line you're going to put is halfway down from the top. So again, you can measure it, or you can just kind of eyeball it. So I tend to just kind of go like this and go, okay, if that's about half, then is that about the other half? Yeah, that looks about right. So I'm going to put a mark right there and put a line across here. So right now I have basically an egg that I split in half this way and I split in half this way. Keep in mind, this is not just a face. This is the crown of the head. Like, this is actually the top of the head right here. So what do you think is going to go on this line right here? Think about it for a sec. What facial feature should go on this line? Okay, so the eye is going to go on that line, which when I first do it, it might look a little bit weird, like I'm drawing a space alien, because there's a really giant forehead right there. But anyway, so I've got an eye here and an eye here. So the eyes go halfway down the head, which seems a little bit odd at first until you realize, oh, okay, well, this is actually the forehead, And this is the crown of the head. So even if there's no bangs, there's still going to be hair here, right? If you look at somebody, even if they don't have bangs, unless they are bald or have a really, really receding hairline, you know, you're going to see some hair up here. So their forehead is going to look a lot smaller. So then, does anybody know the number? Do you know the number of eyes that you usually would fit across the face? Right, so the answer to that is actually 5. I mean, it's a trick question because you think, okay, there's 2 eyes. Yes, you probably only have 2 eyes unless you're a Cyclops. But you're going to have in terms of a unit of measurement, and you can go ahead and draw this on your paper if you want, just so you remember, or you can just label it. Make that a little wider. That's why there's erasers. All right, so I'm making just kind of like a football shape for an eye, more or less. And say these are the same size. I've got 1, 2. In between the eyes is about 1 eye width. So that's good to know, because if you look at the face and it looks a little bit funny, check the distance between the eyes. You know, if you have more space than that or less space than that, it might look a little odd. So, and then there's 1 more. So then I'm going to make this a little wider. All right, so you're going to have like 5 eyes going across the face. Yeah, that's still too skinny. His head's getting wider on this side now. All right, so it's going to be 5 eye widths across. So please jot that down. You can put notes on the side. You can leave it in there like that, but you need to know this line is the eyes, and the eyes go. You need to know that the eyes are like halfway down the head, and that there are about 5 eyes across. Okay? And then you can go back, and because now this looks kind of funny, so then you can kind of go back once you've got those measurements on there and add more detail. And if you need, if you weren't in art last semester, or you need a little more practice with it, there are videos that I made that I put in the module for my MCPS classroom for this week. And that kind of remind you how to draw an eye in more detail that you can draw along with to practice. How to draw a nose, how to draw lips, just some general tips. You know, obviously everybody's eyes are shaped a little different, everybody's noses, everybody's mouths, but just kind of general tips. So you want to have, you know, you've got your tear duct, and then you've got your iris, which is the part of your eye that has the color to it, has a little bit of a texture. You know, if you're going to get really fancy and go back and shade it, you know, you're doing these in watercolor when you do your portraits, so you're going to do the shading with the watercolor part. But I can always use my blending stump, or use my finger and add some value in there if I want. You're going to have a little bit of value underneath the eye because your eye is like set into your head. You know, it's like literally a ball that's set into your ocular cavity. And then you're going to have some eyelashes. I don't know, maybe you've got on a lot of, maybe they've got on a lot of mascara and they're thicker. But either way, they're going to curve. And then over here, same thing. You've got your tear duct, eyelid. They look funny. Some people, when they were practicing drawing their eyes last semester, forgot eyelids. Everybody would look pretty funny without eyelids. It makes sleeping really hard. Being at the beach on a windy day would be highly unpleasant. So don't forget the eyelids. And when you're drawing the pupils, you know, leave a little highlight so they look sparkly. Right, there's some shading inside because there's going to be a little bit of a shadow from the eyelid itself, right? Or, you know, if you want to shade too and you don't want to use your finger and you don't want to use a tissue and you don't have a blending stump, you can use Q-tip as a blending stump. All right, so I can go back and do more of that later if I want, but I'm going to do this now while you guys at least kind of catch up. So you've got your eyes on there. You've got that you have 5 eyes across. The eyes are about halfway down the page. All right, I'm going to add some eyelashes again. If you're drawing eyelashes or painting eyelashes, make sure they curve. You don't want them to look like sticks. Okay. So next, what feature do we need next? All right, let's see. So we've got a line halfway down. So we're going to go 3/4 of the way down. So halfway between the eye line and the chin. I'm going to kind of eyeball it. Let's see, is that halfway? By eyeball it, I mean kind of guesstimate. So about there. So this line halfway between the eyes and the chin, what do you think is going to go there? The eyebrows, no, that would look very funny. I think I'm going to put the nose there. So if you're doing a nose, again, general shape of the nose. So the bottom of the nose is going to be somewhere around that line. Again, everybody's nose. Some people have wider noses, people have longer noses. But generally, most people, and again, you can check you're doing a self-portrait, so you can literally, you have your own face right in front of you. Take your fingers and check on your face and see, look in the mirror, look in your phone, and see if these things are true about you. So if you go down from the tear duct on the inside of the eye, that's, oftentimes about where the edge of the nostrils are, but check on yourself. And you can use that as a gauge. So, you're going to see a little bit of the nostril. You're probably not going to see the whole nostril unless you're looking at somebody from underneath their nose, and that's awkward. So when you start building up the nose, there's kind of a bigger sphere here, almost like smaller spheres here. For the bottom part of the nose, if you're shading, it's always darker on the bottom because the light's probably coming from the top. And then from there, it's almost like a triangle kind of going up here. And then obviously you don't have lines on the side of your nose. Again, that would look kind of weird. So in reality, that's just the value, right? Because it's lighter on the bridge of your nose on the top because more light's going to hit there. And it's going to be darker on the sides of your nose. But, you can kind of go back but keep these lines in for like where the eyes go and where the nose goes. So the point right this sec is not necessarily shading a perfect nose or arriving at a finished drawing, but practicing how to get those proportions. So if your person looks a little funny, that's okay. The idea is just to help you with proportions for future drawings. And that's why we draw in pencil, so you can erase things and move them. And that's why you draw lightly, so you can move your lines around if you don't really like them where they are. Or if you need to change them. Nobody draws everything exactly right the first time. All right. Maybe somebody does. I don't know them. Anyway, so we have a nose, and I'm going to write down for myself that the nose is on the line halfway between eye line and the chin. All right. So from here, to find the eyebrows, if you look on yourself, or you kind of put your finger on the side of your nose. If you've been blending a lot, you're going to get pencil over your face, fair warning. But if you go on the side of your nose and take your finger and go up, you'll feel your brow line. So that ridge, that brow ridge is what your eyebrows are on. So you can kind of feel from the side of your nose the bone that turns into, your brow ridge, and that's where your eyebrows are. So you can go ahead and put the eyebrows in. You know, they're not like one straight line or one shape. They're made out of individual hairs that kind of go a direction. So, you know, some people have thinner eyebrows, thicker eyebrows. But so you have to look at the individual you're drawing for details like that. But for now, just, you know, kind of a general idea of how to find where the eyebrows go. And you can go back and add more details later. And I want you to mainly get, you know, the proportions and the notes on the proportions, and then you can go back and add more. Because practicing shading it more is not a bad thing, because you're going to apply that, you know, in the watercolor by how you put the water on in the watercolor. Okay, so 5 eyes across, 1 eye width in between the eyes. All right, so we've got eyes, a nose, a mouth. Oh no, I don't have a mouth. Let's do that. Let's add a mouth. So, I knew we were missing something. Again, try this on yourself. Take a line. Okay, so, see, every time I turn the camera on myself, I do it upside down. Can I do it right side up? Oh, I did. Okay, so, I'm going to take my glasses off. If you go from your pupil, try this on yourself. Draw a line from your pupil, the black part of your eye, that's the hole that lets the light in, down to your lips. You should probably hit about the corner of your lips if you go straight down from the pupil. So try it on yourself. It doesn't quite hit there on me if I'm not smiling, so maybe try it when you're smiling. Your lips are getting wider. It's hard to talk like this. But so that gives you the general idea of, that's why I don't flip the camera around that much. So that gives you the general idea of where your lips are going to go. So draw a line down, you know, makes it look like she's crying. Draw a line down from the middle of your pupils. And that's going to give you a general idea of where the edges of the lips are going to be. I remember doing a self-portrait painting in high school that nobody had taught me this, and I always thought it looked so, like I was so annoyed, and then I finally realized years later, I made the lips too narrow. Okay, sorry. So you've got the lines going down from your pupils to find the corners of your mouth. Now you need to find where your mouth goes the other direction. So you've got this line for the bottom of the nose that is halfway between the eyes and the chin. So halfway between the bottom of the nose and the chin, put a line halfway between that. So here's the nose. That's about halfway. So put a line right there. All right. So, and then make a note for yourself. So again, the point is not having the perfect drawing right now. The point is, you know, knowing all of these tricks for finding where things go. And in general, when you draw a face, you do usually put all of these lines in first, just lightly, and then draw the features and then go back and erase those lines. It's going to help. Otherwise, you can get a really super detailed eye that it's totally in a weird place, and then it just throws your whole drawing off, and it's really irritating. So this is the lip line. The lip line is halfway between the bottom of the nose and the chin. All right, so here's the lip line. So then all you need is some lips. So to draw some lips, and let's see, most people have this sort of, kind of divot. I'm sure that there's an anatomical name for it that I don't remember, but this little like divot right here, kind of under your nose. And then the lips, everybody's lips are shaped a little different, but if you kind of start in general with like this shape, kind of like if you were a kid and you were drawing a seagull, And then you've got another line in between. The bottom lip is usually a little fuller. I can even kind of start with like an oval there. And then kind of make 2 other little ovals like that. And bring them up. And then if you're getting into, if you're smiling in your portrait, there's a video from last semester too on like drawing teeth. In general, your top lip is usually going to be a little bit darker than your bottom lip just because of the way the light hits it. A little more shadow underneath the lip. Kind of a highlight right here where it puffs out. In general, just look at your facial features and your bone structure. There's always like sections that are like here under the cheekbones. It's probably a little darker. Like I'm not going to do detail with the values right now, but if you kind of think about it, the chin sticks out. It's a little darker under the cheekbones. Some people have more defined cheekbones. This here, your face is not flat. It's not like a pancake with some eyes on it, right? So you're going to have some shading on the side of your face too, because, when you're looking at somebody's face, you're looking at not just the front, but kind of part of the side. So I'm doing this kind of messy and quick just to give you the general idea, but you're going to have some shading on the side too, not just the front. So you don't want it to look flat like a pancake. And then the neck, where the neck is going to be, it depends on the person, how thick your neck is. So you can check on yourself. Okay, does my neck start about where the edge of my chin is? What does it relate to on my face? The ears, same thing. It depends on the individual. Usually if you draw a line from about, so you can check this on yourself, take your fingers, whoops, okay. Take your finger and go from, I'm holding it the wrong direction, but go from like the top of your ear and draw a line straight over. For me, that's about almost like my eyebrow where it meets. And then on the bottom, it's like my lips. But I inherited my dad's giant elf ears. So yours might be a little smaller. I think average is a little more like, around the top of the eye to around the bottom of the nose for the length of the ears. So, if you're doing self-portrait, just check on yourself. But the average is probably somewhere around the eyes to somewhere around the bottom of the nose. But it might be close to the eyebrows, it might be close to the lips, depends on the person. So like top of the eyes, bottom of the nose, something like that for the ears. And, depends on whether the hair is covering them, if you can see them. But, if the hair is not covering them, you need to draw them. Otherwise, it's going to look a little funny. All right. And then lastly, you can add the hair, and that's going to make the forehead look less strange. So, how far the hair comes down depends on if someone has bangs. And for hair, you can just look at the direction it goes and the texture. You can look at if it, where the highlights are in the shadows. I'm not getting that detailed right now. I'm just putting some generic hair in there. But if you're drawing or painting hair, you want to look at the, the direction and the texture, but also like the shapes of the highlights and the shapes of the shadows, rather than trying to draw every single hair. It's much more efficient that way. Or maybe, if this is the top of the head, if it was like the 1980s when I was in high school, the hair would probably like puff up another 6 inches from there. But do what you want with the hair. But that kind of gives you the general idea. So the forehead doesn't look quite so alien once you get a little hair on there. So that is the general idea for facial proportions. And then you can go back, and add other details to be entertaining. If they need a nose ring or some earrings, some gauges, facial tattoos, whatever, excessive eyeliner. So whatever else you want to add there, but that's the gist of doing facial proportions. So make sure you have the notes in there as well, so you remember. You can add other stuff for fun, but have that 5 eyes across, 1 eye between. The eyes are halfway down. Nose is halfway between the eyes and the lips. The eyes and the chin. And then the lips are halfway between the bottom of the nose and the chin. Okay?